Welcome back. Now, the PNP's Hanna has called for the definition of rape to be gender neutral. She says in light of the long-standing definition of rape and sexual intercourse, the assault of men and boys has gone unpunished, unrecognized and unreported out of fear. Joining us in studio for this discussion today is none other than the Member of Parliament for South East St. Anne, the PNP's Hanna. Welcome, Ms. Hanna.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So this is a very timely discussion for some and a very unwelcomed one for others. What prompted the member's motion?
Well, this is something that I've been talking about for many years when I was Minister of Government and also as MP, because there is a legislative dilemma that we face in Jamaica because of the definition that we have of sexual intercourse, which is of the entrance of the penis to the vagina only. And so what happens is a man cannot be raped in this country. And even if that man who perpetrates the rape onto a woman or any kind of assault with any other body part or any other implement, it is considered grievous sexual assault. So as an MP, I've come in contact with women in my own constituency who have been gang raped by men, anally and orally.
Oh, goodness.
And the sanctions and the sentencing of those men are much less because it's not rape. They've been charged with grievous sexual assault. I've had boys when I was Minister of Government who were so afraid, and to this day, who I still know, who are raped by men or sexually abused by women. And they live with that shame and stigma because if it is done by a man to them, they don't come forward because we don't have statistics of men being raped in this country. And if it is done to them by a woman, they also feel stigmatized. So I felt the time was now, and I've always spoken about it, but it has created backlashes because of some religious extremists who feel that by altering certain things, we are contravening biblical sanctions or biblical scriptures. And the problem is that other jurisdictions in the Caribbean have changed their definition of rape to include other body parts, other kinds of implements.
Yes.
And in that way, it has become more gender neutral so that both men and women can be charged for rape and that a man in their country can, charge someone else for raping them.
Interesting. But your colleagues in Parliament don't seem to share similar views on this topic.
Well, I don't think that they don't share similar views. I think what happens, we've had a law that has come to us from the day, from almost 500 years ago,
Yes.
from the days of King Henry VIII, which it's true.
Unbelievable.
And that was the Buggery Act.
Yes.
And at that time, when King Henry was breaking from the Catholic Church, he put into civil law the crimes of both men and women to be punishable by death if they perform certain acts. Now, by about 1828, almost 300 years later, they amended the law to not be punishable by death, but only for men. So it was actually, it was still punishable by death, but it was only for men. And then as it got further on, by 1861, they moved it to hard labor, but still only for men. England expanded their law and repealed it in 1967, but nearly 500 years later, Jamaica still has that law. So it is really only for men, which is what creates the legitimate and legislative dilemma for why we can't change certain definitions. So it's a colonial law that we have and an inheritance. And it is coming from a time when the Church of England said we're breaking from the Catholic Church, or King Henry VIII said we're breaking from the Catholic Church, so we're going to go here.
For his personal reasons.
For his personal, exactly. For his personal reasons.
But one of the things, why then continue to promulgate this message, this argument of change in a time when it appears not much of society is quite ready to handle it?
Because I wonder sometimes if I was around in the days of slavery, would I have stood up on the right side of history? I would have wanted to. And I get goosebumps thinking about it because I know the men who are suffering from it. I know the women who are suffering. I've seen the girls in my constituency. And I think it doesn't matter what time it is, unless many, many voices and actions and calls to actions come forward. We don't break and change things. And so it doesn't matter to me that people don't feel it is the right time. To me, it is the right time because you don't force change to help people. If we don't do this now, you will continue to have sexual violence perpetrated on both men and women in this country. And I can't live as a legislator, I can't live as a human being, as a mother, as a sister, as a wife, as a Jamaican, knowing that this is in place and keep my head buried in the sand of hypocrisy. I'm vaccinated against hypocrisy, so I can't do that. And I think if more people really sit down and think about it, they will understand what we're doing that is so wrong.
And then we have approximately 80% of our population thinking this is a gateway to amendments to the Buggery law.
Well, I don't know if it is so much as 80%, but let us ask ourselves another question.
It's an opinion among the masses.
Yeah, it is an opinion, but it comes from conservative religious extremists. So, but if they understood where the Buggery law was coming from almost 500 years ago, the fact that it used to be punishable by death, the fact that it is only for men, and the fact that today those colonialists repealed it and we're still holding on to it, and the fact that that one piece of legislation is creating the kind of sexual violence perpetrated upon girls, boys, women, men, because at some point it's not a homosexual law that creates a sexual violence. It is the inability of people to want to do something courageous. So to me, you are looking at that one law when all of these other things are happening, and you have this dissonance that says, okay, fine, we are morally upstanding, but on the other end over here, the underbelly of what is happening is just heinous, if you think about it.
Well, I'm going to put this to you. Why can't you achieve protection for young boys and men through provisions under the offense of grievous sexual assault? Why is it important to you to call the offense rape?
Because the sanctions are different, and the both laws are tried in two different courts. So the grievous sexual assault can be tried in the parish court, that's where it's tried, or the Supreme Court, and the minimum sentence, you can get 3 years, or if depending on what it is, you can get 15 to life. For rape, it's the minimum sentencing. It's tried in the Supreme Court, and the minimum sentencing is 15 years to life. There was an incident some years ago where a man forcibly asked a young woman to have oral sex at gunpoint with him here in Jamaica. I mean, some of the stories that don't make the news, that are reported to some of the NGOs, the UN, and some of these organizations would make your head spin. Some of the boys that are suffering in rural communities from men who are raping them daily, whether it is in their own families, would make your head spin. The problem is that we don't have a universal definition of rape like Barbados. And so we dilly-dally and dance between the two definitions because we're afraid to change our definition of sexual intercourse.
But should we be afraid at a time when we're speaking constitutional reform and referendum?
No, we should not be afraid, and that's the point. If we're seeking to move away from the monarchy and to create our own destiny and move away from the vestiges of colonialism, then we ought to recognize how we protect our people, whether it is from physical violence, which is crime, sexual violence. We give them the opportunities to improve their lives and prevail economically and financially. But there's so many girls and boys, I keep stressing it, in the church too.
Indeed.
In the church as well.
The data will show that.
The data shows it. And the boys and the girls in the church. And so whether we want to acknowledge it or not, it is happening. And we need to start having these honest, open conversations with ourselves.
You mentioned in your writing that conservative groups are adding to what you describe as a legal dilemma.
Yes.
But how do you believe these groups can aid in the redefining of collective values?
That's a good question. And I think
they can
start by understanding the harm that is being done and put themselves in a time when the church justified slavery, when they use biblical scripture to justify women not being able to vote or not having an education or being the property of a man. and really look at what they're doing in terms of the practical aspects of their work on helping people live healthy lives and living in a safe environment in Jamaica.
Wow, live the word. All right, thank you so much. That was Southeast St. Anne Member of Parliament, the PNP's Lisa Hanna. She's joining us in studio to talk so much more about the laws. All right, with that, we take a quick break, and sports is next.